opportunity to introduce to you all Alan Seale. Alan is logging in from Boston, Massachusetts right now, and it's sunny morning out there, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah. Alan Seale is an award-winning author, inspirational speaker, a transformation catalyst, and the founder and director of the Center for Transformational Presence. He's the creator of the Transformational Presence Leadership and Coach Training Program, which now has graduates from more than 30 countries. His books include quite a number of books he's written, but it includes Intuitive Living, Soul Mission, Life Vision, The Manifestation Wheel, The Power of Your Presence, Create a World That Works. His 2-book set, Transformational Presence, How to Make a Difference in Rapidly Changing World. His books are currently published in English, Dutch, French, Russian, Norwegian, Polish, and Romanian. Alan currently serves clients from more than 5 continents and maintains a full teaching and lecture schedule throughout North America and Europe. So welcome, Alan. And this is our first part of a series on journey as a coach. And we're privileged to have this dialogue between us today.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I appreciate that.
I really appreciate you spending time with us today to share. And more than anything, as a beautiful, wise human being who has added such a lot of value and is keeping on adding more value to the world around us. Thank you so much, Alan.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Alan, our community is curious to know about your becoming and being a coach. But first of all, would you like to share with us about your Alan Seale Foundation and the Center of Transformational Presence?
Well, the Center for Transformational Presence began. Looks like there's somebody waiting to come in the waiting room.
I'll take care of that. Yeah.
Okay, great. The Center for Transformational Presence was created in 2010. The work has been going since 2000, actually, but we created the Center for Transformational Presence in 2010, and our work was beginning to move much more globally at that point. And then the Seale Foundation, which is based in the Netherlands. The Netherlands has really become the home of this work off there so much. And so actually I spend much more time working in Europe than I do in the United States when I'm in person with people. And the Seale Foundation was created by the woman who organizes all of my work in the Netherlands. And she and I kept talking about how we needed a foundation underneath the work that was supporting the purity of the work, to keep the clear essence of what this work was really about. A foundation that was not about making money, but instead was about service. And so Gabriella Von Roy is a really extraordinary human being who is supporting our work all over the world. She's traveled with me quite a bit to different parts of the world to assist and hold the space in our programs. And she has worked so closely with people in different countries who have been sponsoring our courses within their countries. And so she's helped them to organize and to just really been there right beside them the whole way. So the Seale Foundation is there to support the work and to hold the standard of the purity of the work as it continues to spread around the world.
That's really nice to know. Can you tell us more about you being in a completely different field before you took up to coaching, and how did the shift actually happen? Can you take us into that moment when things changed for you?
Sure. In my first career, I was a professional singer, an opera singer and classical singer in New York, and a voice teacher for opera singers. And it was really the teaching part that I loved so much. The performing was fine. I had a nice career with that. But it was the teaching that was really close to my heart. And it's interesting, even just as I tell this story, that Pradeep, when you say coming from a completely different career into coaching, and actually it didn't feel so different to me. It felt like a really natural progression across. So when I finished graduate school, it's maybe the last time that I've set a very big long-term goal for myself. And I said, my goal is to teach singers who sing on the biggest stages of the world. Well, by the time I was getting to be 40, I was doing that. My singers were at the Metropolitan Opera and most of the major opera houses in the world, singing leading roles, and on Broadway in New York. And that was wonderful. And I was also starting to feel like, wow, I'm really good at this and I'm not learning anything anymore. Of course, there's always something more to learn. And yet it felt like there was something more I was supposed to do now to reach more people. I just couldn't imagine that I would spend the rest of my life sitting on the piano bench, listening to one singer at a time and working just one-on-one. And I just felt like there's something more now. And my work was always this area of consciousness and presence and who you are and how life works as energy and motion was always a part of my teaching with singers. I was a technique teacher. And so as a technique teacher, we were working so much with the energy in the body and how that flowed. And actually early on in the sort of transition for me was I created this program called Self-Discovery as Artist and Performer, working with all kinds of performers, not just singers, but understanding how energy moves through you and how the blocks happen when you're in performance, and then what becomes possible when that block is released. And then also talking about how they hold a space for their audience, how they're showing up on the stage, what is the presence that they bring, because what your performance is rooted so much in your presence, not just in your technique or your skill as an artist. So as I was around when I turned 40 and was feeling like it's time for something to change, and there was also a very personal side to this, that I was living in New York and I didn't want to live in New York for the rest of my life. I grew up in the country in a small town in Kentucky in the middle of the United States, and living in New York was great, and I didn't want to be there forever. And yet I knew as long as I was teaching singers at that level, I had to live in New York. And so in the late 90s, I heard about coaching, and I thought, that sounds interesting. Maybe it's kind of similar to what I've already been doing in this work with performers. I'd also, in 1995, I was ordained as an interfaith minister. So I had spent 2 years in a seminary program studying all the religions of the world and how they came together, really how they, underneath them, underneath the surface of those religions, how much they're so much the same. And so I stepped into coaching, and I did my first weekend of coaching. My first training was through CTI. So I did the first weekend of the coach training and felt like, yes, this is like coming home. This is the right thing for me. So in 2001, I completed my first level of coach training with CTI, the 5 courses, and within the next 2 years, converted my income all to coaching, from voice teaching to coaching. And in 2003, I sold my apartment in New York and left. And the journey since then has been so extraordinary, so much more than I ever imagined. I thought, I'm going to do life coaching, help people to kind of get their lives together. And I really do believe that no matter what kind of coaching we're doing, at the essence, there is that life coaching component. Who are you? How are you showing up? What's that about? And yet the focus of my work kept being this combination of personal development and then evolving into leadership development. And the aspect of leadership development being about presence, leadership presence. And how are you showing up, and what is the impact of that, and what's happening with other people when you are in the space? How do you create an intentional space for amazing things to happen, creating culture in that kind of way. For you as the leader to understand how life works as energy in motion, how the world works as energy in motion. Going back and our work is so rooted in those ancient wisdom teachings and the Hermetic principles. And so coming from that place and then understanding how quantum physics shows us the science behind those ancient teachings now, brings an incredible foundation of knowledge and understanding that serves our work then with energy, understanding life as energy in motion, recognizing our job is not to tell people what to think, but rather to expand how they think, and using that word think in a much more expansive way, because it's really intuitive thinking. It's recognizing that the intuitive mind is the larger mind, and the intellectual mind, critically important, but is just one small part of that much larger intuitive mind. The intellect and the intuition, those two intelligences work together in partnership in an extraordinary way. We've been taught to focus only on the intellect, and yet it's actually when we can go to the intuitive intelligence and recognize that that has access to much more information, and then use the intellect to step in and support, to organize that information, to serve the intuitive mind, then extraordinary things happen. This is kind of the essence of what our work is about, and what's happening in our work with leaders all over the world now.
That's really very beautiful to hear. And we hear a lot of energy work, spirituality, and a deeper meaning to life. I was just curious to understand if you can share with us, what were some of your prime motivations which got you introduced to this energy work, and how did you then evolve this into the Transformational Presence coaching and leadership program?
So, yeah, thank you. I grew up, my father was a minister in a rather progressive Protestant denomination or area of the church in Christianity. And I grew up in a small town in Kentucky. And then my father became quite well known internationally in the church. And so I had the opportunity to, in my childhood, begin meeting people from around the world. And it was not uncommon at our dinner table. My mother was a very beautiful hostess. And so nearly every weekend there was a dinner at our house for whoever might be there. And so I had this exposure already from a young age to at least being able to meet people from around the world. I wasn't traveling and having those experiences of visiting other places, but I was meeting more people. Yet there was another really important piece here that I kept feeling like, growing up in the church, that there's something more. There's a bigger picture than I'm not understanding here. And in my small town in Kentucky, nobody was talking about that. Nobody was talking about, even when I would sense things intuitively. And at first I thought, doesn't everybody sense that and realize that? And then I started to realize maybe not, and nobody's talking about this. So I just kind of left that quiet. But after I had gone through my education and finished graduate school with my degrees in music, and I was working in a church actually as a director of music when I was first out of graduate school, and I kept this feeling that there's something more. There's something more I have to find, was so strong. And so it was kind of coupled, the time that I left that job as a director of music in a church and I moved to New York to pursue my performing career and teaching career there much more fully, was also the time of kind of opening out into a much bigger sense of spirituality than what I was finding in the church. And so here's where already my two worlds were coming together, in that deep in the heart of my being, I'm a teacher. And I had this, because I was a technique teacher and my own background, maybe somebody can put yourself on mute, whoever that is, because of that that teaching and that understanding of a linear process that must be there in teaching, as well as this circular or fluid process, then it came very naturally to me to take very big concepts and bring them down into simple terms, into simple ways that people can understand them. Not to simplify the concept, but to make it understandable. And that's a really important distinction there. So as I began to explore in this realm of spirituality and personal development on another level, and just understanding that there's a lot more to life than what I had known until that point, I began to bring these things together. And even early on in my teaching career, my voice teaching career, I was already starting to teach classes in meditation and classes in just exploration. And so that continued. And this is part of why, at the moment that I realized I have to step away from the voice teaching and into coaching, that felt like the most natural transition. Working with singers, teaching singers, even on a technical level, is different than almost any other kind of performing art. Maybe dancers are the only other ones that are so similar, in that your body is your instrument. And otherwise, a pianist, the piano is there. There's a separation between the person and the instrument. But in singing and in dancing, there is no separation. That your body is your instrument. And so that very close connection, I will never forget. One of my students in New York, his name was Mark Kudish, He's still a very successful performer. Mark was a very, very well-known actor and singer on Broadway. And Mark studied with me for maybe 12, 15 years. And his career really took off during that time. I never thought that Mark really kind of understood what I do, the bigger picture of it. He was there to learn to sing and to be a better and better singer. And yet one day, he and I were talking at the beginning of his lesson about someone else, another singer that he had recommended to come and study with me. And so we were just talking about that guy a little bit and some of the things that were happening in that person's life. And just supporting him as his friend, in a way. And Mark looked at me and he said, we all come here for a lot more than the singing. And I thought, oh, you do get it. You do get that what's happening here is holding you and supporting you in a whole other way. And the work that we're doing as a singer is really about the work of who you are and how you're showing up here. So that transition into coaching was the most natural thing to me. People often ask if I miss singing and performing and teaching singers in that way. No, I don't miss it at all. Because I feel like that the essence of the work never stopped, that it's just taken a different form. And the work that I'm doing now has given me a platform for expression much, much bigger, and a platform for living my soul mission. My soul mission, my life purpose is I liberate and empower. It's helping people to set themselves free and helping them empower themselves. I can't empower you, but I can support you to empower yourself, to step into the fullness of who you are. I was doing that with singers, and then that just shifted on over into the work in coaching.
That's really very beautiful to know, and especially that distinction you brought about. That was a new sense of thought for me about the separation of a person playing a piano when you're singing or you're dancing, you're quite integral with yourself, and that separation is not there. And it's lovely to see that how from music you transitioned into coaching. So for many of the young coaches who are with us out here today, a question that comes to their mind and which they asked me to quite bring it up to you is, what were some of your teething challenges in a formative years as a coach, and how did you surmount that and to become the masterful coach you are today?
In terms of you mean establishing myself as a coach
Yes.
and really moving into that? Yeah. I suppose that it's a little hard for me to even come to the idea of challenges with it. Of course there were, but they didn't ever feel like, oh my gosh, this is insurmountable. What do I do? And I think in part that was because there was this natural progression that happened. I'd already, by the time I went to my first coach training, my first book had already been published, Intuitive Living, A Sacred Path, which I had, it was just a book about my own journey and what I was understanding about living intuitively. And very much a how-to book in a sense, but it was my story. And I wrote that book because I just needed to write the book. That was part of my journey. It took me 3 years to write the book. I had no idea if it would ever be published. It took me 3 years because, you know, I was working full-time at something else. But when the time came to publish the book, nobody would take it. And so I published it myself. And that was in 1997. There's a lot to support you in self-publishing a book now, but in 1997, there was nothing. That was its own full-time job to figure it all out and find out how to do it. But I did. And in the first couple of years, then between 1997 when I published it and 2000 when another publisher bought it, it had enough sales that I kept sending it out to publishers, trying to get someone to pick it up, and nobody did. And there was a moment, maybe this is important for the coaching journey in a way, that there was a moment when the largest distributor of books in the United States owed me $10,000 and they just weren't paying. And that was a big reputation of that distributor, that for independent publishers like me, they just tended not to pay you. And so I couldn't afford to not be paid that $10,000. I was kind of living on a shoestring, as we say in English, you know, all along. And so I remember one morning in early December in 1999, in my meditation, being so frustrated and really just kind of yelling at spirit and saying, okay, look, you know what? If you want this book to have a life, you're going to have to do it because I'm done. I'm pulling the book off the market and I can't do this anymore. And about 3 days later, the telephone rang. And it was the publisher at Wiser Books. And he said, you know, your book, we've had your book here for a while. It kind of got buried under a pile, but it's come up to the top and we like it. If you haven't sold it, we'd like to publish it. And I said, yes, I'm very interested in talking with you about that. And so he said, okay, we have a meeting tonight. I'll call you in the morning. The next morning he called, they made an offer, the book was sold. My story with that is it's okay to get really angry with God, spirit, universe, whatever your concept of that is, and just say, look, I need some help here. And because I think I had to reach that point where I was just saying, I'm done. And then the energy shifted. Well, carrying on over then, that book was published. It was out there. It was getting some really good response. And then I was in the process, the publisher had come to me after the book was out. Actually, no, it was still in the final process of the publishing, and the publishing company was sold. And so now there was a new publisher, and she came to see me in New York. And she said, you know, of all the books that we've kind of inherited in this sale, yours is the one I'm the most interested in. So what's next? And I hadn't really thought about that at all. I was thrilled just to have one book out, you know? So she said, what's next? And I said, well, you know, I've kind of been designing this class on paradigm shifting, understanding how your beliefs, your paradigms shape your life. And what are you changing about that? And she said, that sounds interesting. Give me a proposal. So I just took my outline for the class and sent it to her. And she said, yes, please write that book. Well, I wrote the book, except it wrote itself as Soul Mission Life Vision. It itself about a book about paradigm shifting. There was a section on paradigm shifting, but it wrote itself as Soul Mission Life Vision. And I remember so well, that was back in the days when you took your manuscript and you put it in a mailbox to go in the mail to the publisher. There was no email or internet. And I remember so clearly that moment of putting it in the mailbox in this big envelope and thinking, I hope they like this because it's not the book they asked for. As it turned out, they loved it. And as I was going through my CTI training, Soul Mission Life, that new book, Soul Mission Life Vision, was in the publishing process. So all that is to say that as I stepped into my coaching, I had already then published 2 books. They were out there. There was something that was beginning to create a platform for me, if you will. I also had an audience already from my voice teaching in New York. And the people who came to study voice with me, why were they drawn to me? Because there was something more than just the technique of learning to sing. And so as I began teaching classes in my apartment in New York, which I did for years, that's how all this work that now happens around the world got started, in my living room in New York. And there was a little bit of a built-in audience to start with, because it was my students and their friends and their friends and their friends. And that's kind of how that opened out. So I suppose to come back to coaches who are just beginning your process, there are 2 things I want to say about that. One is you have to get yourself out there in some kind of way, but it's not about what all the marketers will tell you about building your career. It's about how you're showing up, and it's about what you put of value out into the world, what you bring of substance into the world, that people read that, or they listen to that, or they see that, whatever, in whatever form that is you're putting it out there, or speaking engagements, that they hear something, they read something from you, and they realize, I need some more of that. So you have to put yourself out there in that way. The second question that people are always asking me is, how do I find my niche? Because all the marketing people tell you you have to have a niche. And my first response to that is, forget the niche. Just coach as much as you can. Coach and coach and coach, and your niche will find you. You'll begin to recognize who are the kinds of people who are showing up here. Of course, if you have a particular specialty that you know you're going to bring and that can attract a particular kind of person, then fine. But the niche that, if I were to name my niche, it's not what anybody would have on their list of possible coaching niches. My niche is, or my clients are all people who are committed to making a difference in the world. And they come from all walks of life. And they're big corporation CEOs, and they are small business owners, and they are healers and artists and parents and teachers and clergy, ministers. They're everything. But what they have in common is that they're committed to making a difference in this world.
I guess that was really a great piece of advice for coaches. And I think you answered 2 very important questions, like coach, and the niche will find itself. Whereas what traditional marketing gurus are speaking today is, find a niche and then, distinguish yourself in the community. So I guess that's really very useful as to what you said. And also something what you said, I think is of tremendous value to us as coaches, is that put out something into the world that is of value, and people will find you and seek you and come to you. And I guess a great part of your journey, reading about your journey and the evolution of the Center of Transformational Presence, has been that you've never advertised. Always people who sought, and the right people who vibrated or had those vibrations and that energy got attracted towards it. So
yes,
that is really valuable.
Yes, people. I mean, you need to have a really good website. You need to have a website that is full of substance. A website that is not busy selling something and is busy offering something. And so if you visit my website, you'll find that there is a lot of
Yes.
free material there. And we will be in the next 2 weeks launching a new website, which will have a lot of new content, very recent content of free videos and audios, a whole series of meditations called Meditations for Changing Times. It's all just there to support you. We have, I think, like many of us, back in March, when the coronavirus erupted all over the world, many of us, our work stopped out there in terms of if you were seeing people in person, or in my case, I was traveling to Europe all the time. Well, that became immediately impossible. And frankly, I don't know when that will be possible again. And so my initial response to that was, okay, income, that will somehow take care of itself. My job is to keep showing up and bring something of value. And so the first thing I did was create a series of 5 weekly webinars, using our tools and the work in Transformational Presence to offer to people for free. Here are tools, here are ways that you can navigate this time. So very specific webinars for navigating change and unexpected change, and to deal with the fear inside of you, and so forth. And then after that series of 5, I shifted into the Monday meditations, and then did for two months, I guess, a meditation on Mondays, just 20 minutes. And we had more than 100 people in every one from around the world. And lots of more people signed up for my newsletter just because of that. There were so many people. When I would look at the faces in those Monday meditations, especially, and I would see maybe half the people were from our community and half the people I didn't know. And that was so beautiful. Just be there in service. And the more you were there in service, the more people recognize there's something here that's really important for me. Now, there is an important piece about, it's something that we talk about at the Center for Transformational Presence among my team here, of finding that balance between generosity and sustainability. And that's a really important key, because of course we can't afford to just keep giving and giving it and giving it away and giving it away and giving it away, because that's not sustainable. I made a very clear choice pretty early on as this work began to expand. I made a very clear choice not to build a big operation. I've seen so many coaches and spiritual teachers and gurus and in the marketing world or whatever. I've seen them build these big operations with many people on a staff, perhaps, or just a lot of operation to support, and the quality of the work begins to suffer, because then they're doing the work in order to support the operation instead of to support the work itself. So I made a very clear choice that I would stay as lean as I possibly could in my company, and that we would find another way for the work to expand around the world. So even now, to this day, 20 years since I've been doing this work, I have 2 part-time people they're freelance people on my team, a personal assistant and then my web tech guy. And we've been together for a long time, and that's it. Otherwise, it's just the 3 of us, and I'm the only one who's kind of at this full time. And in the work around the world, the way that has expanded, that people, I would teach in one place or I would speak somewhere. I've been a keynote speaker at a lot of ICF events globally and regionally. And so people come and say, would you come to my country? And then we established this business partnership, to bring the work there. And so their job is to bring together the audience and to market the program. My job is to show up and teach. So it has kept my operation very lean. We create these partnerships short-term. Well, they start out as short-term. Some of them have now been many years that I've been teaching in Sweden and Poland and certainly in the Netherlands for the longest period of time. and working now in Belgium. I've taught in 15 different countries. And it's all just been these partnerships, and it's all happened because someone experiences the work and says, this is really important. Would you come to my country? And then we make that arrangement and we do it. And even our contract is very loosely based. It's basically just saying, you agree to this, we agree to this, and we share the profits, and away we go. You know, it's just it's all about getting the work out there. It's all about, there's this thing of transformational presence that I am so blessed to have been the person that it was kind of given birth through. And it doesn't belong to me. It just came through me. And now here we are bringing that to the world. That's the most important thing. And if you are living fully in service of who you are and what you're here for, what your purpose is, what your soul mission is, if you are living fully in that, and you do that dance of generosity and sustainability, the income will take care of itself. I haven't made a budget or made a business plan. I haven't made a budget for years and years, and I never made a business plan. And I'm not saying that that's how you should do it. I'm just saying that's been my experience. Many years ago, when this work was really beginning to expand in a bigger way, and I didn't know what I was supposed to do. And in my meditation, I just kept hearing, say yes to the service you're being asked for. Say yes to the service you're being asked for. So I just started saying yes. And I said yes to everything. I don't say yes to everything now. As you keep going along, you get clearer and clearer about what is it truly that you have to bring. I can do a lot of things, but that doesn't mean that those things are mine to do. I can do them, but here's the real gift that I bring. And that's where I focus. And the more I streamline that, and the more I just live true to who I am and why I'm here, it takes care of itself. Even through this coronavirus, I realized, okay, the travel work, which was the biggest part of my income, that's gone. And I don't know when that will come back. And so I just said, all right, so there's more time for coaching. I can take more coaching clients now. And I knew exactly the kind of coaching clients I want to work with at this point. I want to work with people who also have access to many people, who are, that as we do our work, it will continue to spread out. So there are people of impact in whatever that is, or people who have a really clear vision of how the difference that they want to make. I just held that intention and put that out there. And every week, another client comes, and another one comes, and another one comes, and sometimes 2 or 3. So I didn't make any advertisement. I put an announcement in my newsletter that I've opened space for some more clients. That was it. So I'm not saying that there's not maybe some place for the other ways that you might market your business, but I can speak from my experience to say, when you are fully aligned with who you are, and you just live in service of that, and the gift that you know you're here to bring to the world, in my experience, you'll be taken care of. It's okay.
Actually, I'm really falling short of words to say, because someone private messaged me asking, hey, can you please ask Alan to speak on how we as coaches would balance the business side of it? And you already answered it. So it's like you're as if like you're sensing what's coming in and just responding to it. It's so beautiful. And yes, I wanted to share with all of my coach buddies out here, and also with you, that you have a wonderful website. And I really need to confess, it's been almost a year since I am on your website, and I keep reading on and off. And believe me, it's as if like diamond mines being uncovered again. There is so much to it. And hearing that now you're going to come with a new avatar or a version 2 of your site, oh, I'm really curious to quite see it. And I'm sure all of us are going to really get benefited out of that. So
wonderful.
we are really looking forward to that.
please visit. If you sign up for my newsletter, then you'll see the announcement when it's posted. But our hope is that it gets it goes live 2 weeks from tomorrow. That's what we're aiming for, and we're so close. I think we'll make that now. But transformationalpresence.org, just keep going and visiting there. So there are many articles on the blog, but in the new website, there will also be quite a few new videos and as well as new interviews that have taken place in the last year to 18 months. So that the new website is, the energy of that site to me, the reason it was so important to me to create this new site is much more responsive to what's happening right now in the world. And what's happening right now is this is going to be with us for a while. So it was time to speak directly to this rapidly changing world and how we navigate that.
Yeah, so truly said. And thank you so much. And I guess it's a great opportunity for us that we as coaches of CFI and of a community, and especially created for this period of the pandemic to support, we had the grace of having you out here to help us out and really learn about the deeper meaning of transformational presence and how it could be used into coaching. So there is something that I had read in one of your articles about drawing energy from your fear and anger. As coaches, any tips that you would like to share with us as current times evoke so much of fear, anger, and anxiety in us? How do we deal with it?
Yes. So I'll answer that question. I do want to just say one more thing about the business thing that just comes up to me when people saying how do you bridge that, and that is to say that I'm also very aware that the career that I have and have had over the last 20 years, I think in the same way that I've done it, I'm not even sure that it's possible to do it today. The principles behind it, it is absolutely possible, I believe. But I started out in a time when face-to-face, in-person trainings and development programs were much easier to sell, much easier to fill. And that's gotten harder and harder. And especially as the coaching world has filled up with more and more training programs, to the point where I say, do we need another one? Do we need it? There are just so many. And so it's a different world now than when I started out. And I've been able to transition into this world because I was already established in a certain way and already had an audience. So I want to be really honest about that. And then also to let this transition over to say all the same principles apply about substance and value, bringing that, and being there in service. The form is now going to be different. It's going to be in this format, that more and more things will be in the virtual format as travel becomes more and more challenging. And as we have, the coronavirus is not the last pandemic that we will suffer or some other challenge in that way. So we're learning to establish ourselves in a different way. So I just want to be honest about that, to realize or to acknowledge that, yeah, the path that I've taken, the forms of that, I don't think I could recreate that starting today. However, the same principles behind it apply. It's just going to be, it's going to take a different form now. Fear and anger. One of the most important things in the transformational presence work is taking away any label of good, bad, right, wrong. And everything is just energy, and what is here is what is here. And it's not good or it's bad that it's here. We might like it or not like it. That's, that is there, but it's here. And so the transformational presence work is based on 3 fundamental principles. And I'll come back to the fear and anger part, but this will help to set us up for that a little bit. The first principle, they all come from the ancient wisdom teachings, and now quantum science shows us the science behind it. The first principle is that everything is energy in motion, and everything is a part of a larger process unfolding. That piece is really important. Well, everything is energy in motion, so go to it as energy, not form. But then the fact that it's a part of a larger process unfolding. It is so easy when times are tough to feel like, oh my God, we will never get out of this. We're just caught in this place. When in fact, if we can open that up to realize, well, where we are right now came out of another situation and choices and decisions and things that happened that were some of them out of our control. But there was something happening over here that brought us to this moment. And the choices and decisions and actions that we take in this moment will help to create where we're going from here. So to recognize that what's happening right now is just what's happening right now. It's not forever. It's just what's happening right now. And the more conscious we are in how we are present with and the choices we make with what's happening right now, the more we begin to shape where we go next. The other part of this first principle is that form follows energy. Perhaps the easiest way to understand that is when you look at, those of you who work in companies, to look at the culture of a company and the form that results from that, what they produce on every level, where that comes from, or the culture in a family, or the culture in a community, the culture in a country. It brings particular forms. In my country right now, we're in a huge piece about seeing the forms that have been created by this incredible polarization within our country. The energy is really pulling apart right now, as it needs to do, and it's difficult. Your country, you have your own challenges there, as do many countries in the world. So form follows energy. If you want to change the form, you need to drop underneath to see, so what's happening in the energy? The Japanese call it ma, M-A, which is all about the energetic space. It's not the physical space, but what is the energy within that space? So they might say, what is the ma of that project you're working on? Or what is the ma in that relationship? What's the energetic space in that relationship or in that project or in that company or in that team, whatever that is? So it's recognizing that everything is energy and we have to go to the energy to do the work. Fear and anger, we'll come back to that in a moment then, to the energy behind the fear and the anger. The second principle is that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transformed. We cannot get rid of the fear or the anger, but we could transform it to something else. If any of you have ever done musical or theater improvisation, the first role of improvisation, or the first rule of improvisation, is that you must accept whatever your improvisation partner gives you and work with it. Otherwise, the whole performance will fall apart. Well, life is the same way. If we're willing to accept whatever is in front of us, it does not mean that we like it. But if we accept it, then we can work with it. If we're not willing to accept that that's what's there, we can't work with it. We're going to work against it. And so energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transformed. Therefore, whatever is in front of me right now has just become my next co-creative partner. It may not be my only co-creative partner, but it is the one that's in front of me right now. So if there's anger or fear, I cannot get rid of it, but I can partner with it. And we can begin to work together to transform it to something else. The third principle of transformational presence is that the world is built on a matrix of relationships. And the power of our work happens not in the, if we're talking about a team and a project, you're not coaching the project, you're not coaching the team, you're coaching the space in between the team and the project, their relationship to it. in a personal relationship. It's not coaching that person or this person. It's coaching the space in between. What is in that space in between? It's coaching our relationship to whatever is happening in our lives or in our leadership in our world. And so when we come back to that, now let's come back to fear and anger. That to recognize that the fear and anger is just energy and it's just information. As soon as we let it be information and realize that I'm incredibly angry, that's trying to tell me something. If I'm incredibly angry, it means that something that I care a lot about is being compromised right now. Something that I care a lot about is not being taken care of. Or there's something that I care a lot about that I'm about to lose. Because anger and fear, deep underneath is fundamentally almost always a fear of loss, that I'm going to lose something. And so to be with that and listen to it, to recognize, connected to that second principle we say in Transformational Presence, a problem is not something to be solved. It's a message to be listened to. The anger and the fear are not something to fix. They're messages to be listened to. And so when we listen to that anger, what is it that is important for me to know right now? If we feel incredible fear, what is it that's important for me to pay attention to with that fear? As soon as I engage the anger or the fear, I'm now back in the, I don't want to say in control, but I'm much more in command of what's happening. It's just like the surfer cannot control the wave, but the surfer can become really good at riding the wave, at being in command of how he or she rides the wave. And so for us, the anger comes, the fear comes. That's our initial response to something. We cannot change our initial response to what happens. It just happens automatically inside of us. However, we can choose our second response. So the fear comes, the anger comes, we feel it, and we can choose to listen to it, to be curious with it. What is it that is important for me to see right now? What is it that you want me to know? So we engage the anger or the fear in a dialogue. We partner with it. The anger, the fear, and the fear becomes our next co-creative partner in that moment to move forward. With the anger or the fear, there will be some kernel in there that's really important for you to pay attention to. 98% of it might be big drama just to get your attention. But somewhere in there is a kernel of truth that's really important for you to pay attention to. Maybe it's bigger than the 2%, but it's at least that. And so whatever we feel in any particular moment, be curious about that. Our feelings and emotions are information. And as soon as we let them be information, it takes away the emotional charge and we can begin to work with it. But if we treat them as feelings and emotions and get all stirred up within that, they are controlling us. We are held hostage by the anger and the fear. As soon as you engage the anger and the fear and say, okay, can we work together here? You're no longer held hostage. Now you're back in a place of having some power in your own life. Is this helpful? Does this make sense?
Yes, a lot of sense, I guess. And especially, I guess, the idea that you shared of not coaching the person, but the space between it, the context, I guess, yeah, that's really very powerful. And I guess that is so important for us in any coaching conversation that we have, in a coaching session or with anybody else in life, because life is conversations. And in our conversations, instead of, if we are going to be mindful, or instead of using the word mindful, I would say aware of the space and what that space is speaking between us. I guess there is a lot of things to decipher below the surface.
Yes.
And, yes.
Can we just play with a little exercise just for 3 minutes here?
Sure, please.
So because one of the fundamental practices of transformational presence is, we call it push against or partner with. We are very conditioned when something is not going right.
Alan, you're reading my mind, because that was the next one I was going to just talk about.
Great. Well, so let's just do it. Let's just play with it.
Let's just do
When
it.
when we have labeled something as a problem,
Yeah.
we are conditioned to push against it, to make something happen, to treat it as the enemy, as if now we have to do something with this.
Yeah.
So let's just play with this for a moment. I invite all of you who are here on the call, choose a topic, something that is creating a challenge for you right now. You're having a hard time with it. You won't have to talk about it, so it can be anything you want. I'll give you just a moment to choose your topic, something that is a challenge for you right now. Now, no matter what your relationship to that topic is, just for the next couple of minutes, push against it. Make something happen. Just fix it now. Do whatever you have to do, but this has to be taken care of right now. It's the problem. It becomes the enemy. You must now move against it and make something happen. And notice when you're in that energy of, I have to fix it, I have to do something right now, what happens in your body? What happens with your breath? What happens in your sense of well-being? What happens in your relationship to the topic? Stay in that push against place. Even if it's uncomfortable, even if you say, "Oh, but I don't want to be in this space." It's okay, just stay there, just for another moment. Notice what happens in your body. Recognizing these physical responses is really critical to making shifts. Pushing against. Just fix it. And then take a deep breath and kind of shake that out. And probably the situation is still there. The challenge is still there. So this time, take a deep breath and drop down underneath your challenge, or lift up above it, whichever feels easier for you. Coming to a quieter place. And listen, sense, feel. Let the challenge talk to you. There's something that wants to happen here. There's a shift that's waiting to happen, or a message that's trying to come through. Let yourself receive that. It's trying to tell you something. And what if you partner with that message? You partner with the shift that wants to happen. You partner with whatever it is that's trying to get your attention. And notice how this energy is different. How your breath is different. What's happening in your body. What's happening in your relationship to the challenge itself when you partner with. And then write something in the chat here, just a line or two. What's different for you between push against and partner with? More relaxed, somebody says. Your breath slowed down, body relaxed. From aggressive to calm. Yeah, you can see these things in the chat that are coming in. We haven't solved the issue. That's not the point. What we've done is shift our relationship to what's going on. I say this all the time in our work in transformational presence. This is not a magic pill. This is not something like, just do this and everything will be fine. What it is about shifting our relationship or our perspective or our understanding of what's happening. And then we're able to work with it, to partner with it in another way. Let's take this just a step further. David White, the poet, talks about the conversational nature of reality. I love that term, the conversational nature of reality, because what he's really talking about is we are in a constant dialogue with life. And so paying attention to this push against or partner with, am I pushing against what's happening right now? Or am I partnering with it? I'm a pretty aware guy, and at least once a day, I catch myself saying, Alan, are you pushing against this? Or are you partnering with it? We're so conditioned. It's in the air we breathe to push against, to make something happen. And so in this conversational nature of reality, it becomes really important to be aware of, are you busy talking to life? Or are you busy letting life talk to you? Now, ultimately, it's a full circle dialogue. And yet, we're conditioned to start with, I talk to life. What if we let life talk to us first? So let's play with this in a couple of very simple things. Choose a project or a goal that you're working on, something you want to accomplish. And then be honest with yourself. Have you been talking to that project or that goal, telling it what you want to have happen? Or are you listening to it, letting it guide you, letting it show you what the greater potential is here, letting it give you each next step? Whichever way it is, if you've been talking to it or listening to it, it's all okay. But if you've been talking to it, turn that around for a moment. Listen, sense, feel. Let the project talk to you. What's it asking you for right now? What does it want you to know right now? And then let's choose another topic, something maybe a little more personal. So choose a relationship that's really important to you. And when I talk about the relationship, I'm not talking about the other person or persons if it's a relationship with a group. I'm talking about the space in between, the relationship space. The relationship is its own entity. There's you and the other person, and there's the relationship. There are three of you. And we're talking about this third entity. And if you reflect and you're honest with yourself, have you been talking to that relationship and telling it what you want it to be, what you want to happen? Or are you listening to that relationship, letting it talk to you? What does it want from you? What does the relationship, not the other person, what does the relationship want from you? If you've been talking to it, it's okay. Turn that around. Let it talk to you. So there is this flow. Ultimately, yes, it's a dialogue. We listen, sense, feel, and then we respond. Maybe we ask a question. Maybe we make an observation. And then we listen and sense and feel and let it keep coming back so that we're in this flow. Pay attention. Are you in receptive mode where you can take in information? Or are you mostly in output mode? You're just observing and you're putting information out there. One of the things that I am seeing so clearly in the United States right now, as we're in a huge economic crisis because of this pandemic, many countries are. And what I see happening in the United States, because they're only in output mode, there's no receptive mode in the top of our government. And so as soon as there's a crisis, they just throw money at it. Just spend more money, just as if that will solve it. Instead of taking a step back, listen, sense, feel, what is actually being asked for right now? I've done very little work in the corporate world. However, I've worked with the country CEOs and their deputies for IKEA for pretty much every country in the world now. I'd spent 2 days with most of those teams through IKEA, and this was the biggest takeaway for them, was to realize, oh my gosh, if I just stop and take a breath and step back and let it talk to me, within 5 minutes, I have a whole other set of information. Here's the key. So Pradeep, does that all make sense? Is that helpful?
Makes a lot of sense, but more than anything, it took me a while to come out of it because I went into that relaxed state. Mm-hmm. And it was truly a lot of revelation, especially when you said, are you talking to it or are you listening to it? So that was like, yeah, that made all the difference. And I noticed that answers are just out there. It's just that we don't want to listen to it. We are
there's information everywhere. There are messages everywhere. And it is critical that we learn to pay attention to that. I want to say something about when you just said, I was very deep in it. I went into this deep place to listen, which may very well be the way you learn how to be in this dialogue. And yet the key, ultimately, it's the same with meditation. Meditation is not going to some other place. Meditation is about going deeper and deeper and deeper right here, right now. And so that the key is that even though we may have to practice by going more into a meditative state or that very receptive space, the key is to develop our capacities for this and our skills for this so much that we are listening all the time. As you and I are engaged in this conversation, I'm also listening constantly, and I'm gathering so much more information than just the words that are going back and forth between us. And when I'm in a coaching session, I'm listening on so many levels and sensing and feeling, so that as the client is talking to me and the question that I ask may seem like, where did that come from? And yet, wow. And yet for the client, that question is absolutely relevant for them. I'm listening on some other level and they say, wow, that just opened another door. The question didn't come out of nowhere. The question is here in the energetic space around us. Yeah. It's about listening, paying attention. There are messages everywhere.
Yeah, I guess it's 7:45 now, and we are almost come to the end of the session. Of course, a lot more questions are there which we had to ask you. Let's try and see if we can have another session probably and continue with that conversation out there, depending on your time. Just before we can conclude the session, what is a message that is emerging from you that you want to share with all of us today?
I think it's just right where we just were. It's paying attention. I saw in the chat somebody said, what does output mode mean? The output mode is you're in the doing mode. You're constantly in action. You're constantly putting something out there instead of stepping back and letting it talk to you. Here's the key. Here's the key to life is, do you let life talk to you before you get busy talking to it? This is my belief system. There is an intelligence that is guiding us all the time. You can name that intelligence whatever you do. But there is an intelligence that's within a situation. There's a big process that one exercise I often do with clients called the wisdom within, and paying attention to the wisdom within us, but also then going to stand in the wisdom of the situation. There's an energy and there's an intelligence. That situation is happening for a reason. And if we will pay attention, that intelligence will talk to us and show us what is there here for us to learn. What is it that's trying to shift? What's important about this situation? Nothing is happening just in order to happen. Everything that's happening there is something inside of it. And this whole pandemic that we're in right now, oh my gosh, this is the hardest thing that we have faced probably in 100 years in our world. And it is also so filled with possibility and opportunity for us. Madam Corona, as I sometimes call her, is she's our great teacher right now, and she is bringing incredible messages to us. The question is, will we listen? Will we pay attention? If we are busy just trying to make things back to how they were before, the pandemic will just continue and roar on. The faster we listen and sense and feel and begin responding to the awareness that's trying to come through, to the shifts that are trying to happen. And it's so simple in how we engage with one another, how we engage with our planet, how we hold one another in relationship, how we choose to be with one another in respect, how we choose to be with our planet in respect. As soon as we begin shifting into relationship being what's most important, not just how much money did we make being what's most important. As soon as we shift into being in this space all together and recognizing that everything is connected to everything else, then the faster the virus doesn't need to be here anymore. It's done its work.
Yeah.
So here we are. That's what I leave with you today. And thank you so much for this time with you. I've loved being here with you.
I guess all of us out here would have not wanted this to stop and still keep the conversation going, because it is so beautiful. Yeah, but in the great interest of time and your appointments and your valuable time too, I guess it needs to come to an end. I just thought I wanted to share this beautiful line which touched me so much, what Alan has said, and that's in regard to coaching. So with your permission, if I may share that with everybody, Alan.
Sure.
It was in one of your articles or videos, and it was, coaching is the highest form. The coaching in the highest form is consciousness having a dialogue with itself.
Yes.
Which leads through after a discovery. So I think it's one of the best definitions of coaching that has touched me till date. And it's something to meditate upon, and something which, if we can reflect upon, can bring our coaching and our conversations to a totally different level. So thank you so much, Alan, for being with us and spending your valuable time and sharing your life. I guess there are a lot more questions that we wanted to talk upon, but looking forward to another opportunity when we can do that. And I guess we don't have time now for question and answers, so we'll conclude the session here. But before that, may I request everyone to put on their webcam so that we could take a photograph of all of us together, and also have a screenshot of the same. Can everybody come on camera, please? So
beautiful to see.
Yeah. I'll just go to the next screen, just a moment.
And so, Pradeep, before we close, can I just invite us into a closing? The way,
Sure.
as I mentioned,
That'd
that
be
we have
beautiful.
been, as I mentioned, we have been offering these Monday meditations and from people from all over the world, and we close always with just a couple of minutes to look into the faces of the people who are here, to hold one another as global citizens, to hold one another as this human family, and send love and compassion. So I'm going to be quiet. If we can just take literally 1 minute in silence and look into the faces of your colleagues here from all over your country, and be with them in love and grace and compassion. And to the children as well. Love and grace and compassion. Thank you all so much for this time together today.
Thank you so much, Alan. So a goodbye from everybody out here. And before we go, may I just request all of you to just answer a simple poll. It's very short. I'm launching the poll right now. Alan, just permit us 2 minutes more for this.
Sure, sure.
There we go. In the meanwhile, I'll request all my coach buddies out here to get more information from Alan's site, transformationalpresence.org, and also his YouTube channel. I guess there are both short videos and long videos also, and that the whole bedrock of transformation presence is so wide and deep, I would say. So let's take this opportunity to mine a few diamonds for us to evolve and feel much better and connect deeper into ourselves with that. Thank you so much, everybody, and looking forward to our next event.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye,
Thank you,
everyone.
Alan.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.